right? So empathy, listening, patience, which came out the biggest, relatable, yeah, I mean, that one to come out, integrity, respect. So that kind of whole area, maybe we could explore a little bit more. Enthusiastic, trusting, encouraging, compassionate, we had, didn't we? Organized, approachable. So there's a couple of things there about being approachable, having integrity, being respectful, etc. And we'll look at that when we explore, like, you know, the best ways to communicate with your mentee, because I think they're really, really important qualities, those. We spoke about understanding, being responsive, said about being hardworking and committed and flexible. So we've got a lot of these in here, but I like to sometimes refer back to this, just to kind of be really clear on, like, what's expected of us here, like what are we trying to do when we're building these relationships with our mentees. Okay, so these are kind of the key qualities and characteristics of a good mentor. Okay, so we've got about 20 minutes left, and then we'll have some questions at the end. So the last of the 3 sections that we were going to cover today, so we've done the importance of mentorship and then the roles and responsibilities of a mentor. The last one, which a few of you were asking about at the beginning, is, you know, having some sort of mentoring framework. So some way of providing a bit of structure to the relationship that you build up with your mentee. Now, I totally understand that this is quite an organic process, and often it's built up in a very fluid way, depending on what your mentee needs. But I'm also a big fan of having frameworks and structures and models that we can kind of refer to, just to make sure that we're heading in the right direction. So this one I find quite useful. So it looks at, let me just check, let's go back to this slide. So it looks at the mentoring life cycle, and I'm sure you guys have seen something similar to this before. So it starts off here in this gray quadrant, looking at stage 1, which is setting expectations and establishing a foundation for a successful mentoring relationship. And I'll go through these in a little bit of more detail in a second. The second stage is your kind of negotiation. So you're agreeing on the expectations of this relationship. You're setting working agreements. So this might be things like when you're going to meet, how often you're going to meet, what they want from you. And then the enabling is the doing. So this is right. This is where you are mentoring the mentee. This is where you're sharing your experience. You're helping them set their goals. You're helping them overcome their roadblocks. That's the enabling. And then the last part, because often a mentoring relationship will come to an end at some point when they move on and they don't need it anymore. And this is about kind of the formal closing of that relationship. So redefining what your relationship is moving forward. You know, setting some boundaries there in terms of contact. I'm sure, you know, we've all had the experience where we've had a really good relationship with people, and then, you know, 5 years down the line, they might have more questions for you. And personally, I really enjoy that. I think it's really good to see how people have grown over that time. But obviously within your mentoring life cycle, it's good to have these clear boundaries and frameworks that we can both understand. So let's go through those stages kind of one by one. So the first one is about setting expectations with your mentee. So really this is about getting to know each other. So asking some of those questions that we did with each other at the beginning, you know, building up a relationship. So this is where some of the skills like empathy, listening, understanding, you know, someone mentioned about really understanding the psyche of the person. That's where this, you know, really comes into play. So you're discussing ways that you can connect. So maybe it's a common interest or a common goal that you've had, or a common experience that you've shared. And really, I think that the key thing here for me anyway is really about setting the relationship so you can trust each other and they feel that they can, you know, ask you anything, be honest with you, and you feel that you can do the same with them. So this stage can take a little while, and often this is intertwined with periods of offering a little bit of advice as well, so you can start the moving towards the goals. But we mustn't underestimate kind of the value of this stage. So we've really got to spend time getting to know the mentee and what they want from us. The second stage is the negotiation. So this is setting the goals. So what is it they want from you? Yeah, what do they want to learn? What goals do they want to reach, and how are you going to help them reach them? How might you keep them accountable? So I've got some clients who want me to message and email and call them like every week to make sure they're doing what we discussed. And I've got others that say, look, I'm just going to get on with it, Liz, and I'll come back to you when I finish that, and then we'll move on to the next stage. So it's really about understanding what works best for them. So in terms of the skills we just spoke about, this is where we need to be a bit flexible around what works for the mentee. But you can establish ground rules, for example, when they can contact you, when they can't contact you. Generally speaking, like, I never respond to any communication in the evening or weekends because that's not my working time. And I think it's fine to build up that trust and establish those ground rules with your mentee so they know what to expect from you. So third stage, and this is probably where we spend the most time, is the enabling, or sometimes called the growth stage. So this is where you're sharing your knowledge and experience, and you're helping your mentee overcome challenges, and you're providing honest and constructive feedback. And what's not mentioned in this part of the framework, and something that I feel is really important, is about kind of looping back to check where we are on the goals that we're setting. So often I find in these sessions, in our rush to help, and this is something that I know I do sometimes, you know, we help and we give this advice and then we move on to the next thing. And often I found with some of the people I'm either coaching or mentoring, it's good sometimes to reflect and go back and say, we discussed that thing the other week, you know, how are you getting on with that? Did you find that that worked for you? Do you want to explore that anymore? Right? Not just keep moving on to the next thing. So it's good to kind of just do this almost as a loop. So set a goal, share experience, give some feedback, check back in. So reflect back in on what's worked and what hasn't worked for them. And then the last bit is then harvesting that learning and making sure they're applying it in their real life situations, and then redefining your relationship. So if it's the end of the kind of formal mentoring stage, it's then making sure they've got the resources and the support and the help that they need to carry on going forwards. If you want to leave, you know, that relationship open so they can come back and ask you for help, need to be clear about that. But it's just about really understanding what the next stages are and making that definition, that change quite clear with the mentees. They don't feel like they've been left hanging. They know what the next stage is for them. Okay, so that's that last phase, which is closure. So just to summarize on what we went through today. So we started off looking at the importance of mentorship. Thank you for sharing, you know, your feedback on why you became a mentor as well. That was really interesting. We then looked at the role of a mentor and spoke about, you know, the different responsibilities that we have, and also some of those qualities and characteristics that we thought were helpful and necessary to be a good mentor. And then we finished up looking at that 4-stage framework there in terms of preparation, negotiation, growth, enabling, and closure, which is just a very simple framework to help us guide us through the process of what we're doing. So I hope you found that session useful. Please do give the team some feedback on, you know, what we can do to kind of support you as being mentors and what you want out of the next 3 sessions. We've got building trust and effective communication coming up on the 24th of October. So we discussed that's an important one, right? Building up that trust at the beginning and then learning how to effectively communicate with our mentee. So more details will be sent out about that. I'll hang around at the end if you guys have got any questions. But thank you so much for your time and your contributions to all the discussions. That was really, really great to hear from everybody. And I look forward to seeing you at the next session.